And,
Now they propose they receive about the minutes right here.
yeah.
Okay, mics are on?
Yeah.
You all set, Bob? Ready? Okay, good evening, everybody. Welcome to the school committee meeting of February 8th, 2022. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge of Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, before we get going, I'm just going to read the remote information here. School committee meeting, in-person attendance is limited to 18 people. Masks are required, and attendees will need to practice social distancing. The public can also access this meeting via WebEx technology. The Burlington School Committee will hear public comment in person and virtually. Meetings are also broadcast live on the cable access TV, BCAT, as usual. For those who want to join us through WebEx, the meeting number, access code is 2337-465-7869, and the meeting password is Tuesday.
I like that.
All right. First item on our agenda is approval of the minutes from the January 25th meeting. Is there a
I'd like to
motion?
make a motion to approve the minutes as amended by Mrs. Downey that are at our seats tonight.
Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That's approved 500.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yes, sir.
Sorry, I got a notice from BCAT that they still need 1 minute,
Okay.
so.
Do you sign it?
I signed it. Catherine had.
Or just sign down that, Eric?
Okay, they're good.
Okay. Getting back to our agenda, number 3 is the approval of the warrant. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the warrant as submitted. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstain, aye, 401. Next item on our agenda is public participation. Just to remind everybody that our policy is public participation is limited to 3 minutes, and we will keep track of that, and when the 3 minutes are up, I'll try to let everybody know. Public participation is limited to anything that's not otherwise on our agenda, so if you want to speak to something on our agenda, we'd ask that you wait till that agenda item is reached. So having said that, is there anybody present or online for public participation?
Yes. I hope I'm in order, but the first person I saw is BEA Sarah Eshelman.
Sarah Eshelman.
I do want to comment, there should be one other person before me. Gabrielle, are you here?
I
You
am,
have the
but
order?
go ahead, Sarah, that's fine.
All right, thank you. My name is Sarah Eshelman, and I've been an English and journalism teacher at the high school for 5 years. Today, I would like to address the school committee on the issue of effective professional development in support of the BEA's vision of early release days once a month. Earlier this year, a statement on equity was released, averring in part that educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support they need to develop their full potential to learn and thrive every day. I fully stand behind this, and I am glad to know the leaders at Burlington School District have laid out this statement so explicitly. Yet this statement cannot merely live on the website. Equity requires systemic change, and this includes change in how we structure professional development. Early release days just once a month will create a sustained momentum toward educational equity. The high school already has monthly late openings under Common Planning Day. Prearranging early release days is not so different. Let me tell you about the professional development I have received just this year under the current calendar plan. Over the summer, I participated in a reading program where I and a number of other teachers across the district read Matthew Kay's Not Light But Fire: How to Lead Meaningful Race Conversations in the Classroom. This was excellent professional development, where I read from a useful source and engaged in online conversations with colleagues across departments and schools. I started the school year hoping to meet up with the same colleagues to continue this momentum of transforming our teaching. Yet no such opportunity came. It wasn't until November when the district provided PD on equity through a program called Newsella. On the surface, the 1.5 hour long training looked effective. I'm here to tell you it was a waste of time and money, and in truth had more in common with an advertisement for Newsella than real educational training. Since then, there has been little adequate professional development provided to support teachers in meeting this equity statement. Random days as late as January and March are not enough to create the necessary momentum for real change. If the district really believes in this equity statement, if the district holds to these values, then the district must create the necessary infrastructure to allow teachers repeated opportunities to further our learning, to reflect on what we've learned, and to create the kinds of classrooms where all students can thrive. Staying with the status quo of disconnected, unplanned, all-day professional development will keep the equity statement just that, a statement, a bundle of words thrown together to create a veneer of cultural competency. Members of the school committee, you are reasonable people. I know that you can see how a change in the system is needed if we hope to make a change in the lives of our students. Moving away from how it has been will get us closer to what can be. Please listen to the teachers who live this day in and day out and heed our solutions. Together, we can make educational equity a reality here in Burlington. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Is there anybody else?
I'll go next.
Could you just identify yourself, please, for the record?
Yep. My name is Gabriella Mirabella.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Gabriella Mirabella. I have been a part of the Burlington Public Schools faculty for 10 years as a Spanish teacher at Marshall Simons Middle School. Those years have been the most rewarding of both my career and my life, but have not come without hard choices. To those who do not know, in order to be a public school educator in Massachusetts, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education requires you to get your master's degree within the first 5 years of teaching. When I started my teaching career, the only way I could afford to do this financially was to live at home with my parents, work full-time during the day at MSMS, and take my master's classes at night. Many of our members are young professionals like myself and are not married. Having a single income in Massachusetts to support yourself during these times is incredibly difficult. Although I had to make a lot of sacrifices in my personal life to achieve this, it was always worth it because I love what I do and I always, always feel appreciated by my students. It's time to feel that same appreciation from the school committee. To recertify our license, we are expected to take courses and complete professional development. Some of that is provided by the district, but many courses are paid for out of pocket. There is a tuition reimbursement program, but it does not totally cover the high cost of graduate level courses and repays you for one course per year. For example, last summer, I paid over $3,000 out of my own pocket for graduate courses. I am hoping to be reimbursed by the district this year, who will repay me $375 for one of my courses. Burlington teachers and educators all over our country deserve whatever they can reasonably bargain from their community. They are the backbone of a town's civil service, have reinvented themselves in their classrooms several times over throughout the pandemic, and continue to do so. While much of our society has settled into new normals, changes to protocols and classroom procedures continue because of ongoing concerns around how to best protect our children. Our work has only been harder as anxiety in students soar, requiring us to double as counselors while reintroducing isolated children to the social fabric of our community. Burlington is a place that prides itself on education, and many teachers live in town. If we want to continue to attract strong educators, we must continue to invest. Burlington may be a highly compensated district, but so too are a number of surrounding cities and towns. The $100,000 salary rumor is just that, a rumor. Many of us do not need the COLA to live a lavish life. We just need it to continue to live our lives the way they are now. Budgets are a reflection of a community or organization's values. Who and what do we value more than our children and their education? Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle. Is there anybody else?
Yep. Good evening. My name is Sue Rogers. In 1988, at 23 years of age, I arrived at Marshall Simons Middle School when the most popular student names were Jessica, Ashley, Jennifer, and Joshua, compared to today's Caden, Jaden, Luca, and Quinn. I have been privileged to spend the first half of my career teaching sixth grade science, ELA, and social studies, and the latter half as the BEAM program teacher. I'm currently serving on the BEA negotiating team. Recently, I've come to learn that the average base salary for a Burlington teacher is $100,000. Because I'm a 1970s student of the failed New Math Initiative, I have a healthy skepticism of numbers. My pay stub and I are stunned because my 34 years of service puts me at the top of the salary schedule. Unless I earn a doctorate, I'm what you'd call maxed out. I've dedicated my entire career to Burlington, never using this town as a stepping stone to loftier opportunities. And yet, I do not earn what the district is publicizing as the average base salary. How many more years should a teacher serve Burlington in order to earn that reported average? Clearly, something doesn't add up. It's an unfortunate trend in education, but in order to afford to live as a single household earner, I work a second job just as many other colleagues do. I've come to this tonight to implore the school committee negotiators to revisit the town's fiscal leadership and fight fiercely for the necessary funding to increase their proposed salary percentages. Just as urgently, I caution taxpayers and champions of high quality public education. If Burlington truly wants to attract and retain the very best educators for children in the new schools you plan to build, particularly as the nation heads into what employment experts are calling the Great Resignation, then the time has come to support salary increases that allow teachers to keep pace with the escalating costs of living in Massachusetts. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Sue.
Ellen Abrams has her hand raised.
Ms. Abrams?
Thank you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, we are.
Great. Thank you for the opportunity to address you. My name is Ellen Abrams and I teach at the middle school. 9 years ago, I experienced serious medical problems and the Burlington School Committee supported me unreservedly. Your kindness and support played no small part in my being able to get through it and return to teach with renewed dedication. It saddens me now that I am not seeing a similar level of empathy and support for all educators during this unprecedented pandemic time. Going on 3 years now, teachers have had to reinvent their pedagogical styles and course delivery time after time as schedules and circumstances have changed. Often on the fly, we have needed to accommodate all kinds of unforeseen issues, assuring that each student and families' needs are met emotionally and physically, as well as educationally. While many workers in other professions have had the opportunity to work remotely to protect themselves from disease, we teachers are here in the thick of things. Speaking for myself, I will say that some of us are not so young or healthy as we once were. It's no exaggeration to say that we have put our lives on the line for our commitment to Burlington students. There seems to be crosstalk, but I will keep going. Fear of being exposed to a potentially fatal disease as we come in contact with hundreds of people each working day is overwhelming. So we must downplay the risk in our minds day after day as we enter the school building. The stress is very real. I personally have contracted the disease, even fully vaccinated and boosted. I recently lost a younger member of my family whose death was likely precipitated by COVID. In light of present circumstances, I am very disappointed that Burlington does not recognize the value of its teachers by compensating us at least to keep up with increasing inflation. It seems disingenuous to thank verbally teachers, but not demonstrate appreciation with a cost of living wage commensurate with rising living costs. Surely we're not in the profession to get rich, but maintaining a standard of living is not an unreasonable request.
Could I ask anybody listening to mute yourself, please? We can hear something in the background.
Ellen, I think you're muted, Ellen.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Abrams.
Can I finish my last sentence since I was interrupted?
Absolutely.
Thank you. As I mentioned, while other departments in town have reached quick agreements for contracts during the past year, the beleaguered teachers continue to need to fight for recognition and fair consideration while enduring the insults of the pandemic. Please do not delay further in doing the right thing on our behalf. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm going to pronounce his name, so I apologize in advance, but Ava Brem?
Hello, I am Ava Brim. I am a junior at Burlington High School, and I'm also a member of the DEI Advisory Committee, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee. And if you wouldn't mind, I would like to share my written statement as to why this is important, not only to Burlington as a community, but to the school especially. I've noticed that equity has been something that has been hard to achieve in the modern world lately. Men are getting paid more than women, and the gender gap is unimaginable. And women do not get equal rights from birth, and it is hard to do that when we are treated differently from society and from everyone else. Inclusion was also a big part of my written statement, as I stated that I am disabled, a member of the LGBT community, and how I feel that all voices matter and should be important and included into a conversation without people having to feel uncomfortable around it. Lastly, when it came to diversity, which was the most important to me, because diversity is listening to people's history, listening to people's origins, their hardships, and learning to recover from that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody else, Bob? You can see?
Cheryl Mantilla?
Cheryl Mantilla?
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. Thank you so much for the chance to speak. I am Cheryl Mantilla, and I have been a teacher at the middle school for over 20 years. As I look around the school committee table, it is nice to see some familiar faces. My colleagues and I have taught your sons, daughters, granddaughters, grandsons, nieces, and nephews. The last 2 years have been difficult for all of us. However, a 2% salary increase translates to a pay cut in real wages. This is reality of 4% inflation last year and 7% this year. Additionally, the average salary and wage increase nationwide is between 4 and 5%. Furthermore, there are ways to compensate teachers outside of salary. 2 days in a 187-day school calendar year translates roughly into 1% of time and salary. Compensation may include taking days off of the already comparatively longer teacher school year, and doing so without simply redistributing those hours. When we talk about working with teachers on compensation, we are talking about working with those who have volunteered literally thousands of hours above and beyond the contract for Burlington's children. The one specific example of many that I will provide for this is Teen Light. Teen Light was the teacher-developed, all-inclusive 8th grade community service program that over 3,000 students participated in, primarily outside of school hours over the course of 12 years. Teen Light raised over $130,000 to help support children and teens with depression, anxiety, autism, and childhood cancer. Approximately 100 teachers and staff help support this program by volunteering for walkathons, lollipop making sessions, student leadership meetings, and much more. Collectively, teachers volunteered approximately 1,000 hours each year for Teen Light. No teacher ever requested or received a stipend or any financial compensation for this program. If teachers had been paid for this time, the cost would have exceeded $450,000. When we talk about teachers requesting a fair contract, we are talking about teachers who volunteered $500,000 worth of time to develop leadership, community, empathy, and inclusivity in Burlington students. We are talking about teachers who care very deeply about our students. There is always budget pressure. However, I call on all of us to raise the bar where treatment and compensation of teachers are concerned. Burlington can lead the way in how communities and indeed the nation view, treat, and compensate its teachers. Please remember that teachers are not nameless and faceless. We are the people whom you and the residents of Burlington have trusted and continue to trust to teach and guide.
I think we lost you, Cheryl. Can you hear us? All right, Cheryl, if you get back on, I'll let you finish your thoughts.
Bob, is there a way that you could mute people whose microphones are on? And there's like a ton of feedback. It's distracting.
Every single person is muted right now, except.
Okay.
Oh, except for you. Let's see.
Cheryl, are you back on yet? All right, we'll come back to Cheryl if she's able to get back online. Is there anybody else who would like to speak?
Do any of you? All right.
Yes. Hi, David Cousins. This is my first time to school committee meetings, so.
Could you I'm sorry, could you identify
David,
yourself?
can you pause for 1 second? Sorry,
Yes.
the chair is speaking, sorry.
Could you please identify yourself? I didn't hear you when you started.
My name is David Cousins.
Thank you.
I'm a parent of a kindergartner. I was saying this is my first meeting, a school committee meeting, so I didn't know what to expect. I think it's pretty cool actually that the teachers can kind of appeal to the school committee. I wish I could do that with my boss for a raise. You know, we try, but my boss is very good at saying no. I'll just say that. So this week, I would just like to, I don't know if there's dialogue, ask or urge the school committee to kind of rethink its position on the school mask requirement. Of course, this week there's been a lot of news nationwide about different states lifting or extending the mask requirements. I know that Massachusetts state has a requirement per DESI, et cetera. But I think it would be great if the school committee could resolve to impose no requirements stricter than what DESI requires. I know at the beginning of the year in Burlington, the requirement was a bit stricter actually than CDC and DESI. So I would urge the school committee to resolve to impose restrictions not more severe than what is mandated by DESI.
Which are they?
Thank you, Mr. Cousins. We're actually going to be discussing the mask policy later on in our agenda under item 8A, COVID update. So at that point in the agenda, we'll have more of a dialogue on that particular issue, but thank you for your thoughts. And anybody else who might want to speak in public participation with respect to the mask or the COVID situation, I'd ask you to hold off until we get to that point in the agenda because we will be discussing that at that time. We're still
Yes,
getting,
I could go.
we're still getting feedback, but we can't figure out where it's coming from. Did I hear somebody else who wanted to speak?
Yeah. Yep, me.
Please,
Hello, my name is Shafali Bakrai,
And I'm a
and I'm a
current
current sophomore.
sophomore at Burlington High School. So, as well as Ava, I'm a part of the DEI, Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, and also the Advocacy Room. So, both of these committees and clubs have been trying to promote more diversity, equity, and inclusion across Burlington High School. But our bigger motive is to just push it across all school systems. So, if it would be possible, could I share my statement with you guys?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. So, as an Indian American, diversity, equity, and inclusion are important to me because these are the key ideas to create a safe, inclusive, and inspiring environment where everyone can be celebrated no matter their background. The Burlington Public School System has made an effort to push for more diversity, equity, and inclusion across the school systems. I would be honored to help make this push since I have seen these problems occur as a student. In the past, I have faced racism being an Indian American, and my thoughts and opinions were seen as invalid because of my ethnicity. A school community needs to push for diverse students and make them feel comfortable. We should include all students and give them equal opportunities. Forming an environment where diversity, equity, and inclusion are apparent will help form an inspiring community that will innovate and encourage others. So far, my experiences in these committees, we have pushed for more change, but it would be amazing if we could see more of this happen across the schools. So, yeah.
Thank you very much for your statement.
Bob, is there anyone else for public participation?
Looks like Cheryl Nantia may be back. What about, is that Cheryl Nantia back?
Yeah, Cheryl's back in the conversation. Cheryl, you got,
Hi, Cheryl, if you want to finish it, if you want to finish your thoughts, please go.
Sure, I'm not sure where I got cut off. I'll try not to repeat myself. Just at the very end, I was just commenting that there's always pressure. However, I call on all of us to raise the bar where treatment and compensation of teachers are concerned. Burlington can lead the way in how communities treat, view, and compensate its teachers. Please remember that teachers are not nameless and faceless. We are the people whom you and the residents of Burlington have trusted and continue to trust with your children and grandchildren. Prioritizing children and requesting a fair contract are not mutually exclusive. Teachers can and do prioritize the education and well-being of Burlington's children every day. We would like to continue to do so while being respected, appreciated, and fairly compensated. Thanks so much for letting me back on.
Thank you. Anybody else, Bob?
just Liz DiTucci.
Liz, are you there?
I am. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, my name is Liz DiTucci. I'm the parent of 2 Fox Hill students. I'm also a town meeting member in Precinct 6. I'm here tonight with a couple of requests and some feedback. And just right off the bat, I want to be really clear why I wanted to speak. So this isn't specifically about masks. It's not about vaccines. It's not a dig on our wonderful teachers that are on this call. It's not political at all. So just right off the bat, first up, over the last few months during the school committee meetings, we've heard from the high school principal more than once. We've seen lengthy presentations from the middle school principal and assistant principals. We haven't heard anything about what's happening in our elementary schools. We have not, waiting for the background. We haven't heard from the elementary principals. We haven't heard about academics. We haven't heard about social emotional activities. So my first request is that we start to hear more about activities at the elementary level. Second, I have a 5th grader. Her last normal school year was 2nd grade. Now she doesn't switch classes for reading, math, science, or social studies, all which used to be standard at Fox Hill. The only time she leaves her class is for specials. She still eats lunch in her classroom. These fifth graders are not set up for success next year at the middle school. COVID numbers are down, and I feel, and a lot of parents feel, we need to stop being so ultra conservative with these elementary school kids. So there are good things going on. So here are things I know. High school groups are traveling to Boston and other places for high school related activities. Middle school chorus mixes kids from different teams. School gyms and rinks are filled with students and parents and fans. Other school districts allow parents to volunteer at school. The prom is planned. Fifth graders at Pine Glen board a bus and go ice skating weekly. So we absolutely should be doing all these things I just listed. Just as an aside, the fact that Pine Glen and Memorial do this ice skating for their fifth graders and the other two elementary schools don't, it's very, very frustrating. And so I'd like to see this happening at all of our elementary schools. So here are my questions. Why aren't we doing field trips? Why aren't we doing school-wide activities? These kids don't get to do over elementary school. It happens once. For 2 years, going on 3, we've heard about social emotional health for these kids. And now we need to start to turn and change and do more. So what is the policy of Burlington schools for larger school gatherings? What about field trips? So those are the questions I have, and that's my feedback. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Liz. I don't have an answer for some of those things right now, but that's certainly something we'll talk to the administration about and get back to you on in terms of those types of policies.
Can I ask for timing?
On a response?
Yes.
Maybe it might be before the end of the night, it might be next meeting. It depends on the questions and what information is necessary.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else, Bob? Okay. Thank you, everybody. Moving on in the agenda.
Mr. Chair, can we, I'm sorry, I don't
Yes,
want
sir.
to interject, but I'll, please go ahead, and then I'll jump in after.
No, if you have something.
You want to go first,
Oh, I'm
Derek?
sorry, Martha.
Okay. So I did want to make a statement. I know that I want to thank everyone who came to public participation tonight for all the different topics that you raised. They're all really important, and this is a business meeting, so it's not easy for us to answer, for example, Mr. Tucci, all of your questions right now, tonight, but those are really important questions. I do want, and I'm not going to respond to every comment from every teacher, but I did want to make a few statements because there's been a lot said in public. There's been newspaper articles, and the school committee negotiating team has not made a lot of public statements, so I wanted to share with the teachers and with the community some of our perspective of what's been going on. And my comments were written before I heard what the teachers said tonight, but I did want to comment in particular. There was an article in the Burlington Union on February 3rd, and there were a lot of comments.
Can you hit the mute button for me?
Okay. Okay. Mr. Cuna is trying to mute whatever that background noise is, and we haven't been able to find it. So I think he's still working on it, but we'll do our best, okay? So based on the comments that Patrick Murphy, the BEA union president, made that were printed in the Burlington Union, I wanted to comment because the school committee perceives different sticking points than the union does. We are glad that the union is perceiving that we have made some good movement on some issues, which is something Mr. Murphy mentioned, and we certainly feel we've made some movement. We agree. The school committee and the BEA and all the teachers have a shared interest in what is best for the teachers and the students. I have no question about that. The school committee wants to preserve instructional time for students and time for professional development for teachers and staff, for effective professional development for teachers and staff. We have listened to the BEA proposals, and we have asked questions. The union negotiating team has listened to our proposals, and they have asked questions. Despite public comments from some union members, we have been negotiating in good faith. At the beginning of the negotiations, the school committee proposed numerous ideas aimed at increasing instructional time, with the goal of engaging the union in conversation on the proposals that would hopefully be most appealing to the teachers. Once the union made clear that they were not in favor of many of these proposals, we stopped focusing on those proposals very early in the negotiation process. We did continue to make flex time proposal at the elementary school level, but last month the school district removed that proposal from the packages that we offered to the union. Our current offer is not seeking any substantive changes to the teachers' working conditions and still offers a pay increase that will allow our teachers to remain among the top paid teachers in Massachusetts over the next contract period. And I agree with the comments earlier. The numbers that people have mentioned are not from the school committee, they're from DESE. The numbers that give our teachers an average salary of $100,000 come from DESE, and those are not what the district is saying is our average. Those include a number of different features, which I won't go into now, although those are comparable to other school districts where all the same qualities or characteristics are included in that number. So I want to say that I do support what was said tonight about how that is not real accurate to what an average Burlington teacher salary is. Our financial offer will also continue to outpace what many local districts are receiving during their initial pandemic year and this 3-year contract period that we are currently working on. We did agree to a 1-year extension with no requests from the teachers with an increase for the last school year, not since July 1. Yes, our school year is longer than most school districts in the area. Our school day is also shorter than many other districts. And as the BEA has acknowledged, our teachers are some of the top paid teachers in Massachusetts. Since 2020, we have also spent hours negotiating 2 memorandum of agreement to safeguard the health and safety of our teachers, staff, and students. We have also addressed the changes in instructional methods during the COVID pandemic. So this understandably adds to all of our frustration about not having settled the contract yet. We understand how great our teachers have been while teaching through a pandemic. We believe that teachers are essential. That was my favorite sign from one of your standouts. We wish we had the power to end this pandemic, but we don't. We hope that we will settle a fair contract with the BEA soon. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Dr. Conti, did you have something you wanted to say?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I just want to take an agenda item out of order with your permission.
Yes.
If we could get down to equity, the DEI Student Advisory. As always, the students are ahead of us, and Ava and Shafali's comments I think are very appropriately part of public participation because they're members of our community and their voices need to be heard. So I want to commend them for speaking during public comment, but I'd like to ask Mr. Porch just to provide some context for those comments, and then if Ava and Shafali are still here, Mr. Porch, maybe they can you can introduce them to the committee.
Thank you, Dr. Conti. Can you guys hear me?
Maybe be a little closer.
Thank you, Dr. Conti and Mr. Chair. I think we lost Shafali. She just left me a message that she was heading to another event, so she won't be able to come back. But Ava and Shafali were the 2 students that participated during public comment. We didn't do a great job of clarifying, the agenda portion, so I'll own that part of it. But those 2 young people are part of the DEI Student Advisory Committee. which is newly founded this year for Burlington Public Schools. There's a group of young people who range from, 9th grade through 12th grade who have courageously decided that they wanted to add their voice to the conversation and to what we're doing as a school district. You will all have an opportunity to meet these folks, these young people, here sooner than later before the school year is out. But we invited them because we wanted, folks to hear from them directly, the impact that they think that this work can have for their own experiences and for the experiences of students that come along behind them in Burlington schools. So I don't know if Ava, if you're still here. Bob, you see Ava?
She's waving.
So, Ava, I'm here, and I don't know if you can see me or not, but I was super jazzed when you came on, so thank you for showing up tonight. You're amazing. And do you have anything else you want to add about your experience?
I just want to share that DEI has been a eye-opener for a lot of things that I didn't realize were such big problems, especially in Burlington, especially with diversity and inequality, because as a white person, I do not experience that. So hearing from people of color and their personal take on it was very eye-opening for me. And I just really appreciate all the other members in the advisory board who are willing to speak up about injustice that they face, not on a daily basis, but that they have seen before, firsthand or secondhand. Thank you.
Thank you, Ava. Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate you.
Thank you, Ava. Dr. Conti, are there other things that you want to move around on the agenda to try to get some people?
I think if we just go through the subcommittees and get to Brooke,
Okay.
and then we have a special guest this evening too, so.
I did want to make a comment about this topic, if we're not going to go back to it, the DEI student advisory update.
Again,
Yeah.
Okay. I just wanted to comment, we have, Mr. Porch has told us about the process that the students all went through and the high school went through to set up a student advisory board. And I'm delighted that you have been able to select those students, and two of you, thank you, Ava, and to Shafali, who's not here, for coming and speaking with us. I do hope that we'll be hearing from you more through the year. I didn't catch how many students are on this advisory council. If you could just fill us in a little on that.
Sure. There are currently 16 students on the advisory, and we were hopeful to work between 8 and 12 students, and then the additional students would form what's called a sub-advisory committee, so as to include all of the students that, made the commitment to participate. And there'd be, designated roles and responsibilities. One of the distinctions would be that the advisory itself would have the opportunity to come here and present to leadership, and the subcommittee would be a catch-all for parking lot items, messaging, communication, and things like that. We want to teach, or I shouldn't say teach, but support, facilitate learning around leadership for all of the students who made the commitment to participate.
That's excellent. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Thank you, Martha. All right, going back to the agenda, information reports, subcommittee reports. Does anybody have any subcommittee reports they want to present?
Beth Colburn has one.
Catherine?
Did you want to let Beth go first, or I know that they wanted to go? I'll go. So I just wanted to give an update on the Transportation Committee meeting that I had. We had a really nice presentation by the co-founder named Melissa of an app called Pogo. And again, she did a presentation on, other schools around the nation that are using this app to help parents and students get their kids to and from after-school activities. She showed us some of the cost involved to launch it, and there are several follow-up items that she has to get back to us on. But what we're trying to do is, see if it makes sense to use an app like this to help students and parents get rides for the after-school activities and share rides, which is also going to cut down on traffic, et cetera. So I just wanted to give an update and just say that what we're trying to do at this point is possibly do some sort of a test with middle school and high school students, if it makes sense. We have, of course, get permission from the appropriate people to do so. I did talk to Brooke this evening and gave her a little homework assignment, because I remembered Sarah had done a presentation, our student representative from last year, and had brought up this whole subject, and I thought there may have been a survey. And what we're trying to do is see how many parents and students would actually take advantage of an app like this before we approach the town for any funding that we might need. So again, Brooke, when you get a chance, next meeting, whatever is convenient, if you are able to find that survey, and then if not, maybe we can find a way to do another quick survey to middle school parents and high school kids and students and parents to see if there really is an interest in using something like this. Thank you.
Thank you. Beth, were you going to present the subcommittee report?
Yes, please. Thank you. I'm Beth Colburn with the CPAC. A reminder that we have our CPAC board meeting on February 15th at 6:30. Our next caregiver chat is February 23rd at 6:30. Both of those things will be listed on our website or Facebook page soon. We're excited to hear about the district's recent program reviews, and we're looking forward to hearing more about that soon. We're getting ready to start the CPAC award cycle. And lastly, we've been getting a lot of parent questions and concerns about the search for the permanent special education director. So I'm looking for an update on that. How are you seeking out candidates? What's your timeline? Will there be stakeholder involvement, et cetera?
Thank you, Beth. Dr. Conti, you.
Again, Mr. Chair, Ms. Colburn, I can answer briefly. I did share with a CPAC member the timeline for the Director of Special Education search process. The job will be posted through this month. We will have different stakeholders involved in on a search committee to go through resumes and to conduct interviews. So it's meant to be an inclusive process. Again, we are looking through School Spring and other education-related search databases, and again, that job has been posted, I believe, for several weeks already. So, but I can reshare that the details of the search process with you after the meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other subcommittee reports from anybody?
Mr. Chair, just very briefly, many of you were there. The Ways and Means approved the Fox Hill feasibility study. I believe it was 10-1 was the vote. Town meeting is coming up on February 16th, where the warrant article will be presented. So again, if Roger's on the call, I just want to thank Roger for his advocacy and for presenting that to the full Ways and Means committee. And we're looking forward to town meeting.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is Ways and Means. Roger, are you here? And if so, anything to report?
Yes, I'm here, but nothing in particular. I think Eric already covered what Ways and Means did, approving Article 11.
Thank you. Thank you. Moving down, student representative Brooke Hovas is here in person tonight.
Hello, is this working? All right. So we had our, probably our first student council plenary session 2 weeks ago. And from that, pretty much all of the grades besides the seniors are trying to fundraise to make up for the money that they couldn't get last year and the year prior. And then the juniors set their prom for Danversport next May. And for the seniors, since our last normal school year was freshman year, there hasn't been a lot of community building amongst our grade in a long time. So we're going to possibly do a field day like the seniors did last year on top of prom. And then we also want to do some sort of student versus teacher sporting event to build better relationships with the teachers before we leave. And then The big issue in the school right now that's been like the talk of the town is prom. And so there's been a lot of inquiries about it at the student level, and whether juniors can go has been the biggest like ask. A lot of the juniors we know like started buying prom dresses, and even more so than the seniors have. So they're like ready to go. But we got word from administration the other day that it is uncertain if they're going now, and it will be up to the Danvers and Burlington Board of Health, and we won't know until the end of March. But that's been causing a lot of anxiety amongst the students because they want a definite answer. It's ultimately up to the boards of health, but there's just been a lot of questions about it. And the last thing was the executive board started a website for all of the kids in the school to be able to go to them and ask any questions about student council and how to like get involved in the school.
Thank you, Brooke. Do we have any update on any of that, Dr. Conti?
Absolutely, and I'm excited to say, Brooke, so the prom is scheduled. It's scheduled to be a junior-senior prom, my understanding. I believe it's for May 16th is the date. Is that correct?
Yeah.
It's scheduled for the Danvers Port Yacht Club. So that's what I know. That's what I believe is happening. That's what we are firmly in support of. What we have a hard time saying now is to say anything so definitively, because who knows what can happen. But if things continue the way they are, we believe things are going to be opening up more, and you will all be able to enjoy your prom all together. There's plenty of space. You'll be maskless. Danvers, the community, won't have any restrictions, and Danvers Port, the facility, won't have any restrictions as well. So I think that's the plan. So I want to sort of reassure all the juniors and seniors who are buying clothes and doing whatever they're doing, they should continue to do that. We are not looking to restrict that activity at all. Mr. Sullivan is fully supportive of it, but understanding that this is a student activity and you guys are doing all the planning, but we are in support of it. So I'm not sure I can be any more definitive than that.
Thank you. Chris?
Quite a few parents have asked me about the prom, and I'm very familiar with the Danvers Port Yacht Club, and its current capacity is up to 650 people. So unless there is some terrible relapse of COVID and everybody puts new mandates in, I can't really imagine it being a problem. There's plenty of room for both classes. So I certainly hope it works out that way. But, you know, the only fly in the ointment would be if Danvers imposed some restriction, but I don't expect that to happen.
Again, Brooke, I don't know. If I can get as close to saying that this is going to happen as I possibly can, that's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Okay?
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Brooke? Martha?
Yeah. This is not about the prom, but you've been giving us good updates on the different fundraising that the different classes are doing, and I know it's been very hard for classes to build not a war chest, a prom chest or whatever, a collection to do activities. And I want to encourage you to include my name and ask, tell all the classes that they can include me on their direct solicitations, so that if there is some kind of a fundraiser, I probably would not come to a bowling night with the seniors, but if they're selling grapefruits, I would probably try to buy them. So please have them add my name, and I'm guessing the rest of the school committee, yes, we're getting a yes. Please include.
I don't like grapefruit.
Okay, so he won't eat the grapefruit, but he'll go to the bowling night, right?
I'll take the bowling
Yeah. Please add our email addresses to their publicity and marketing, because we'd love to support you. And thank you. I wouldn't otherwise hear about it. So thank you very much for all the work you're doing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brooke. Anybody else? Okay, moving on. Item 6, learning. Poet laureate, Dr. Conti.
This is one of my favorite events with school committee, and I usually don't put those two things together. So,
Me either.
And so this evening, I want to invite up our poet laureate for this year, Bella Gill is going to join us, and she is going to recite one of her poems. Is that correct? Which we're excited to hear. Bella, you have a couple special guests with you. If you want to introduce your parents to the committee.
Oh, yeah. My parents are right there. That's Allison Gill and Bobby Gill right there. They came to watch me.
So,
If we have you sit there, you'll be on camera and on mic. Is that okay?
yeah, that'd be great. Can you do it? Can you do it sitting down, or would you rather stand?
Okay.
We'd love to see your whole persona, but this way everyone will get to see you and hear you.
If you can move the mic closer to you, too.
Yeah, and the mic,
Sure.
move the
Absolutely.
mic closer.
closer.
Can we remove
Okay.
the mask?
Oh, I took my
Okay.
mask off and I didn't
All
put
right.
it on.
So the poem that I will be reciting tonight is called Once the World Was Perfect by Joy Harjo. Once the world was perfect, and we were happy in that world. Then we took it for granted. Discontent began a small rumble in the earthly mind. Then doubt pushed through with its spiked head. And once doubt ruptured the web, all manner of demon thoughts jumped through. We destroyed the world we had been given for inspiration, for life. Each stone of jealousy, each stone of fear, greed, envy, and hatred put out the light. No one was without a stone in his or her hand. There we were, right back where we had started. We were bumping into each other in the dark, and now we had no place to live since we didn't know how to live with each other. Then one of the stumbling ones took pity on another and shared a blanket. A spark of kindness made a light. The light made an opening in the darkness. Everyone worked together to make a ladder. A Wind Clan person climbed out first into the next world, and then the other clans, the children of those clans, their children and their children, all the way through time, to now, into this morning light, to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just for the school committee, it's so funny because we have this event every year, and Bella, you represent a long line of other poet laureates, and we almost take for granted the amount of work that it goes into our Poetry Out Loud program. So I just want to make sure I recognize Shannon Janovitz and all of the teachers who put forth an effort to Poetry Out Loud, because you have to go through a bunch of different rounds, is that correct? And the finals, and then to have to wear a mask. Even last year, they had the Poetry Out Loud finals virtually. So it's they've just made incredible adjustments. And Bella, you thank you for making our night so much better. Mr. and Mrs. Gill, thank you for sharing your daughter with us. So I appreciate that. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much, Bella. Congratulations. That was a great job. Thank you.
Mr.
Okay.
Chair, the emerging artists, Mr. Rakovich had a scheduling conflict, so he's going to come next time.
Sure.
So we can talk about that, and when he comes. And so if possible, I'd like to go to the school choice for first reading. Okay, so for the committee, Principal Sullivan is recommending that for the 2022-2023 school year, we continue to offer limited school choice by admitting non-Burlington resident students for a maximum of 10 students in grade 9, 5 students in grade 10, 5 students in grade 11, and 5 students in grade 12. The committee should be very familiar with this at this point. As this is a first reading, school committee should take this under advisement and hold a public hearing and vote on this matter at the March 8th meeting. So again, this is to continue the school choice, limited school choice program as we've been practicing for, I think, at least 12 or 13, 14 years. So.
This is a first reading. Anybody have any questions or comments that they want to offer at this point? Seeing none. Move on to the next one, out-of-state travel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Patrick, Larkin, Ray, Porch, and myself are requesting permission for out-of-state travel to attend the 2022 Carnegie Foundation Summit on Improvement in Education. This summit is being held March 27th to 29th in San Diego, California. Again, is anticipated to be about $7,900, and this will be covered by the Curriculum Instruction Office. We typically go to one national conference a year. We are not attending The National Superintendent's Conference this year, just because of the timing, was during higher COVID times. So, and we feel this is a better conference, to be quite honest with you. So it's recommended the school committee approve out-of-state travel to the 2022 Carnegie Foundation Summit scheduled for March 27th to 29th for Ray, Patrick, and myself.
Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second. Any discussion, questions? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes unanimously. Next item, mid-cycle progress review, superintendent.
Mr. Chair, can we maybe, we can do this now, but can we, I think people might want to be more interested in some of the other agenda items, if we
Sure.
can move those up, and then we can certainly do my mid-cycle
Okay.
at the conclusion of the meeting.
We'll come back to that one.
We can come back to that one if that's okay. I'll put people to sleep.
Next one is equity.
Yes, sir.
Let's talk about it. Is that,
So I'm going to hand that over to Mr. Porch in terms of equity, and then he is going to invite up Ms. Ciccolini to, I think, talk about an exciting opportunity that they've been working on.
Yeah, this is the best part for me. Christina Ciccolini, come on down. You're the next contestant up on Let's Talk About It. While Christina's coming to present, we are going to be moving forward with the Let's Talk About It series, and we will be getting out the content for that session very shortly, but it's we're looking forward to that.
Good.
But Christina's got some wonderful news around some programming that's tied to our equity efforts. Ms. Ciccolini.
Good evening, everybody.
good evening.
Hi, Christina.
Can I take this off?
You can.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just, sorry, I'm still getting used to wearing glasses. So I just wanted to talk about actually a program that we've actually tried to do at the high school for the past couple of years, but unfortunately because of COVID, the program got to a slow start and didn't happen, but we're hoping this year will be the year. So we're doing Burlington High School Unified Basketball Program, which is going to be an all-inclusive interscholastic sports team. Students participating in our Connections program are invited to train and compete with peers from our BHS basketball and leadership programs. This partnership involves training and competition and provides meaningful involvement for all athletes. The goals of the Unified Sports Athletics program are to improve student physical fitness, to sharpen skills, to challenge the competition, and to have fun. Teams will be able to practice, travel, and compete together against the other ML12 high school unified basketball teams. We have coaches that we have identified. We'll have practices that will be about twice a week. And the team schedule, just like all the other sports, will be on Abrams Live. Our home site will be here at the high school gym and also Wildwood Park for the outdoor basketball facility, just for COVID reasons as well. It's actually going to be considered a varsity co-ed sports team, so they will have the opportunity to receive a varsity letter. The competition in the season, the team will compete against other ML12 unified teams, as I said, and the games may also be scheduled to play on Saturdays, depending on the school district we are competing against. There'll probably be about 5 to 7 games, and we will conclude with the league-wide jamboree or Hoopalooza. So we're hoping that this will start in April. The unified basketball players, both parties will have to fill out on Family ID and provide an up-to-date physical. And we're looking into how we're going to transport the kids, but it looks like we'll be just like with all the other sports teams, we'll be transporting them to and from the games.
Great.
That's it. Thank you.
Nice job.
We're really excited about this. This is going to be great. The only downside is the sport itself of basketball. We couldn't find a more interesting sport. But
You don't want to wrestle?
Like wrestling.
yeah,
Oh, my goodness.
But Ms. Ciccolini, Mr. Hart, I think the high school, Mr. Porch, all worked hard to put this together. I think it's going to be a really exciting opportunity, and I think there are 5 or 6 other teams in the league now, and it's really growing. So I think there's a real commitment in the Middlesex League to continue to expand unified sports opportunities for students, and it's exciting. And Ms. Ciccolini is also going to be following up. At some point, this is going to support our request for purchasing some vans for transporting teams like this, as long as other small teams and other opportunities for students to get out in the community. So you're probably going to see that later on in budget season.
Thank you. Any questions or comments, Martha?
This is so exciting to hear. It's a program that I never would have imagined. And you and other people have thought it up and figured it out, and it's really awesome. And, you know, just like with Poetry Out Loud and other programs, I mean, the teachers and the staff here are putting together all kinds of incredible things. So thank you so much on behalf of all the students and all the families. So it's very exciting. And I hope that when you publish the schedule, I'd love to be able to come to a couple of games. So I have my pass that I can come as school committee member without having to pay the entrance fee, see?
Yeah, I have to say, I have to thank Mr. Hart, because he's really been helpful in leading the charge on this as well.
I'm not surprised, but that's great. Thank you all, you know.
Christina, I may have missed, you may have said this. Tell me again about the eligibility and the age and the grades.
So right now it's high school. So
Right.
it would be our Connections program, which is our life skills program, and along with some of our regular ed students that will help participate in this program. That's how they'll make it a varsity sport and be able to get a varsity letter.
Nice.
Okay. Sounds like a wonderful effort. I wish it had happened.
3 years.
I wish it had happened a few years ago, but it sounds like a wonderful effort.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody else? Thank you, Christine.
Again, Mr. Murphy, to Ms. DiTucci's comment earlier in the evening, obviously we talked about high school programs today. If you remember, prior to winter break, we had the high school come in, we had Ms. Purchase come in. Our plan was to have the elementary principals come in and to talk about their programming. January sort of blew that up, but we are going to get back to some of the full programming, so parents in the community can hear about what's going on in our elementary schools. There is a lot going on, but we had some exciting things to share this evening, and we had the opportunity for our poet laureate, so that's why we did that today. It was, but I certainly want to make sure I acknowledge that, and have heard the feedback that we need to show more of what's going on across the district.
Thank you. Anything else under item 7, Ray? I know the students already spoke earlier.
Yeah, I wanted to add, Christina's kind of heading back to her seat, but Ms. Ciccolini has also decided that she wanted to share some partnership with Let's Talk About It with the CPAC. And so going forward, during that segment of Let's Talk About It, the CPAC will share updates along with Ms. Ciccolini. We just feel like transparency is a very important thing, and that collaboration piece is a really important thing. So that will happen as we go forward. Let's Talk About It as well. She's already informed and connected with CPAC members on this part of the programming going forward. So I just wanted to share that as well. Did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Christina. Yes.
Just a quick comment. I think that is fabulous. I'm just so pleased that you're incorporating the CPAC members into the Let's Talk About It program. That's great. Thank you for that.
It'll be nice introducing Dr. Conti to a sport that takes like coordination and athletic ability, as opposed to bang this head against a mat.
Eric,
So
is
it's a
your-
win-win for everybody.
Is your favorite mud wrestling?
Yeah.
Or just plain wrestling?
Just please. All right.
All righty. Moving on down. Section 8, culture and relationship thriving. COVID update, Dr. Conti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We actually have a lot to update, and I'm going to ask Patrick to first talk about the update on moving away from contact tracing and in the test and stay program to our opt-in testing. And so Patrick has an update there. That's a significant change. And that's a significant sort of relaxation of some of the mitigation factors that we had. So Patrick, can you speak to the opt-in program, please?
Sure, thank you, Dr. Conti. So we have started our home testing, opt-in home testing, with a little bit of a blip for the families that were involved because the test came in last Wednesday. We got them all packaged, sent to the schools on Thursday, late Thursday, because there were a number of tests to send out, and then we had the snow day. So we were asking people to test on Mondays. They did get the test, but they couldn't really test till this evening, which isn't the end of the world. Currently, for parent opt-ins, it's over 1,000, just over 1,000 at this point have opted in for the opt-in testing. And again, families can continue to opt in moving forward. I have to send an update to the state on how many tests we need for families roughly on Wednesday. So tomorrow's the deadline for the next round. So I'll be checking those numbers. And then for the staff, hold on, I'm just going to the bottom of the spreadsheet. For the staff, we have just over 340 staff have opted in so far for the opt-in testing. So the way the state did it first, I think probably not necessarily wasn't a priority thing. It was to get their system up and running. They did staff first. The first week, we got them on a Wednesday and got them out to the schools. Thanks to Rosemary we wanted to make sure that the work was done here in Central, not to put more on the schools or the nurses, because in our minds, part of the plus of this program was trying to take some things off the plate at the school level, particularly the nurses who have been doing more work than any school nurse has ever done in history prior to this year. That's worked well. We're hearing feedback early on, just in the last couple of weeks, as we've gotten away from contact tracing because of the state's new option, that the nurses are starting to feel like it's a little bit more like their job was previously. Not quite there, but they're starting to see some glimpses of that. I know the state, so the second week we did the students, we got them out. We're distributing in middle school and elementary through homerooms. And here at the high school level, we're doing it right out of the main office. They have a list of the students that families requested the tests, and the students can pick them up at the main office. Been trying to send emails routinely to remind families that, particularly for elementary and middle school, the days they're coming home on the backpacks. We would expect, again, we'll keep updating this, we'll send multiple emails, but that the next round of tests for students will go home next Friday, I'm guessing, prior to vacation. Then after vacation, I think the state's looking to have all the tests, staff and students, arrive together in one shipment. So that's where we're at right now with the testing. I know when this all started, I think the positivity rate in the town, if I'm not mistaken, was something over 20%, and I think it's around 5 now, if I'm not mistaken, last week in the town, just the numbers. So we're hoping those, as we alluded to earlier with prom, that those numbers continue to go down, and we don't see the typical little blip after a vacation. I know that's been what we've seen during COVID so far, so we're hoping that we don't see that again. So that's the latest. If you have particular questions on that, or if you think I missed anything, I'm happy to jump in.
Thanks, Patrick. Questions or comments? Anybody? Christine?
So my messages, emails are totally blowing up with parents who are asking why we can't get rid of the masks.
Masks are next, Mrs. Monaco, so we wanted to talk about the
but so my
opt-in.
question relates back. I know what you're going to say when we get to masks, so are we still going to be doing testing after the masks have been no longer mandated?
Go ahead,
So
Madam
through the chair, the plan right now, again, we had a call with the Merrimack Valley superintendents today. So our plan is to continue to have people test at home, like the state's gonna provide these tests. If something changes, we will let them know. But in school, we still do provide symptomatic testing for students that are having symptoms during the school day. Again, if parents have consented for that, we do provide that. And we're actually seeing, I think, more people continue to opt in for that consent to test in school if they have symptoms. So again, as long as it's there, I think it's peace of mind for people to be able to get the test. But the other thing is with the, more plentiful at-home tests, people have the option either way. They can have our nurse do it or they can do it at home themselves. But
And-
the bottom line is we're just trying to get back to like pre-COVID.
Right.
If you're sick, stay home.
So if people don't opt into this program, they don't get the test, but they're also not under any obligation to do any kind of testing. It's just, if you would like to be part of this program,
Yeah.
we'll give you the tests and you do it every Monday.
It's opt-in, yeah, and I don't know why you wouldn't want to have more tests at home just for, because I know one of the problems, I think, when we got the Omicron peak is that the tests weren't available. So, I
Right.
mean, I would encourage people to, have these tests in their medicine cabinet. Again, this isn't the spirit of the state kind of procedure here, but again, there's no way for us to verify. We're asking people to use them on Mondays and test their kids. So
Okay.
that's the
I
way.
just wanted
yeah,
to
yep.
kind of be clear about it so that people understood fully what we're talking about.
Martha, did you have something? No. Anybody?
Okay, let's do masks, Mr. Chair, so we can do that. So we'll talk about masks as clearly as we can. So first, some numbers. In the age group 5 to 11 is 49%. In the age group 12 to 15, we have 75%. In the age group 16 to 19, we have 81%. Those are the percentages of students who the state defines as fully vaccinated. That's 2 shots. And you all know the state has a different definition of fully vaccinated than the CDC. So we're going by the state rules, which again is the not as conservative as the CDC. The mask requirement, the initial mask requirement that was through January, required districts to be at 80% in order to request a waiver from the mask requirement. That mask requirement was extended until February 28th. There's some debate, I've heard it 2 different ways, that the 80% wasn't extended with the mask extension, and I've heard other people say it was, so we're trying to seek an answer to that. After the last school committee meeting, we applied for a waiver from the mask mandate for Burlington High School. We have to apply school by school. We applied for Burlington High School. The waiver process works where you have to attest. I had to attest that the school is over 80%, which I did. The Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, we call DESE. DESE then has to approve receipt of my request, and then the state has to do whatever the state does, and they need to get back to us with the approval of our waiver. So the high school was submitted on February 1st. We got confirmation on February 3rd that they had received our request. We have not yet heard whether they approved our waiver. There's nothing else I can do. Everything that we can possibly do, we've done for Burlington High School. Just in case the 80% is not required, and again, I've heard 2 different things, I also submitted a waiver request for Marshall Simons Middle School at 75%. Again, I submitted that waiver, and I just this evening popped up it was confirmed that the state has received our waiver request for Marshall Simons Middle School. Again, having just received the confirmation tonight, I haven't got approval from that waiver yet. If I get approval in the next 8 days, next 8 school days, then we can have a conversation. We can talk about lifting the mask requirement at those 2 schools only. Why didn't I submit a waiver for the elementary schools at 49%? It's a very low percentage. And also I have to apply school to school. The easily available data lumps all the kids together, and we're trying to disaggregate now what the percentages are, because you have to apply school by school. So we're working on that. My firm belief, and what I'm hearing, is that the state is going to end the mask requirement on February 28th and pass that decision back to schools. They may uncouple the mask requirement from the percent vaccinated, so it may just be a local decision at every level whether masks are required or not in 8 days. It also may be the reason why they won't make a decision, or they'll delay the decision on the waiver requests, because in 8 days the waivers are going to be moot. It's not going to matter whether you have a waiver in place or not. So I know you're getting lots of emails. I'm very concerned. We want to try to be less conservative, I guess is the term that was used. I think that there's going to start to be some major changes in mask policy beginning in March or at the end of February. I believe that's going to happen. We are begging the commissioner. We are begging the commissioner to make that decision prior to February break, because the decision to test and hand out tests over winter break, you remember, came right in the middle of winter break. We all had to come back. Staff had to show up. We had to distribute everything. Again, not that that was a problem, but we understand that communication over February break would be a problem. So we are asking him in the next 8 days, hopefully in the next 2 or 3 days, to announce. There's pressure if you're watching the news. New Jersey just ended their mask requirement. Connecticut followed. New Jersey said they are ending their mask requirement, though not until March 15th, because it takes some of the departments of health some weeks to write regulations if there's going to be regulations. So again, my belief is the mask mandate is not going to be extended beyond February 28th. And then that is going to be a local decision again at that time. I'm not sure if there's going to be any delay due to regulations that need to be written from the state perspective. I'm not sure if the state is going to decouple the percent vaccinated from that decision. It may make sense, because if all of a sudden they adopt the CDC definition of fully vaccinated, our 81% of the high school is going to drop significantly, so they may try to decouple that. So I think that's what I have. We've done everything we possibly can to be proactive about getting a mask waiver approved. The waiver could come in tomorrow. I don't know that, but I think in 8 more school days, the students will return to March with a different level of protocol and mitigation happening in schools. I think as spring comes, you're going to see less and less restrictions. I think you're going to see more of a return to best practices, and I think that's really going to March is going to be a real transitionary month from what I'm hearing. So I know you're getting some push about mask requirements, and again, we've applied, we've done everything that we can, and we're waiting to hear from the state.
Thank you. Questions or comments? Martha?
I would be interested in knowing, I don't think you're going to know the answer tonight, but there were a few school districts that did get waivers earlier, and what the results were in terms of if there were additional spikes in COVID cases, that kind of thing. I'd be interested in knowing what happened there. I'd also like to request that you and your team, whether it's Barbara Conley or whoever, or Susan Luminello, a recommendation, if the mask mandate is dropped by the state, what they recommend in terms of ways to move forward. If we're going to change our mask mandate, if it's going to be up to us to make that decision. We can all banty back and forth some ideas, but I think we'd like to hear from you with the support of our nurse leader and of the Board of Health of what you would recommend that we have in place. So there's been a number of emails of people who were really anxious to have the mask mandate dropped. I've also heard from parents who are very concerned about having the mask mandate dropped for a variety of their reasons. So there's people who have fears and concerns that are really valid, I believe, on both sides, which you don't usually hear me say that, you know. But these are all real things that everybody's anxious about. And I would not like to I don't want to be in the position of having to make a decision about what our next mask policy is without hearing some recommendations from you. And you probably were going to do that anyway. So, because you have always made your recommendations, but I specifically feel like it's important. Clearly, if we dropped our mask mandate, it would certainly be included in that new policy that anyone who wanted to use a mask would, of course, be allowed to continue to use it. It's my understanding that a person wearing a mask, especially if it's a KN95 or an N95, is more protected than at the beginning of the pandemic, when the mask wearer wasn't as protected as the fact that the mask wearer was not endangering someone else. And that's my understanding of how the science has evolved. So I'm much more willing to look at that kind of an option than I was 2 years ago when we didn't know and when the information was different. So long-winded, but thank you for sharing what's up to date now. I hope for the parents who've been emailing us and wondering without emailing us, it is up in the air right now. It sounds like in about a week, in 8 days, the state will give us some direction of whether they want us to just make our own decision or if they're going to continue to have something. So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, just again, a couple points is, Ms. Simon, the school districts that had had their waivers approved prior to the Omicron saw the same type of spread that we saw, a spike in cases. I'm not sure they could even correlate that to having the masks off or on. I just think it was a much more contagious strain, so it's really hard to apply. There wasn't an even landscape, so I'm not sure I could ever answer that question. I'm going to ask Patrick to talk a little bit about the test and stay and the low percentage, because he's explained that to me very well before in terms of who they found. But just, I guess the way I'm thinking about this, and I'm oversimplifying it, is we're in a better place than some, because there are some communities that not only did the schools have a requirement, but the communities had a mask requirement. So let's say Burlington had a mask requirement for indoor spaces that expired on March 15th. It wouldn't make sense for us to eliminate our requirement if the community had one. Just like the pressure here in Burlington is, there's a lot of sense to removing the requirement in schools because the requirement doesn't exist outside of schools. And I would also say, I think they're beginning to decouple the vaccination rate, the percentage vaccinated, because so many people have had the new variant that whether you're vaccinated or have had and recovered from COVID, you sort of present the same way. So it's really about hospitalization. That is the key. And if you think of sort of the old rules, if you've had and recovered from COVID and you're asymptomatic, we wouldn't be testing you, or you wouldn't even be considered to be a close contact for 90 days, which would really take you to the end of the school year pretty much anyway. So again, I will make a recommendation at the time, but I'm certainly leaning, it makes sense, I think, in the situation that we're in, that we go to more of a personal choice in regards to mask wearing. And again, we wouldn't be in conflict with the community, and I think that we would need to look at not only vaccination rate, but also we've had a lot of students who have had and recovered from COVID, and staff who've had and recovered from COVID as well. So I think that's happening. Patrick, with the question of all the test and stay, wasn't there a percentage of students? And
Yeah.
I'm going to mess that up.
No, it's okay. So the governor highlighted back in earlier January, the numbers across the state. We'd done, as a state, over 503,000 tests. And out of those, over 496,000 were negative. So it was 1 point something percent positive. So the question again became, for the state and then local districts in Burlington, I think we had done just over 5,000 tests, and just over 4,000 were negative. Or am I in the hundreds? Am I wrong? No, I think that's right. I don't have those in front of me, but I think that's right. But I know our positive percentage rate was just under 2% as well. From all the work we were doing in the schools, like everybody in the community knows if their child was impacted, close contact, get tested for 5 days in a row. And I understand at the time where we had the new variant and it was spreading rapidly that it seemed like a prudent step. But then after we had done it for a few weeks, especially the week right before the December break at Francis Wyman, I was there to witness the work, the effort, the teachers, the kids coming in every day, to do all of that work for such a small percentage of positivity caused, I think, people at the state level to rethink kind of where we're at. It's hard to answer your question, Ms. Simon, directly, because I know, for instance, like one school that I think was one of the first in the state to get a mask waiver was Hopkinton High School. So they got their waiver, I believe, I want to say late November, early December. Right after that, we got hit with the Omicron variant. I think they went back to masks, if I'm not mistaken, just because. So it's hard to say. I don't think you can concretely say that them not wearing masks caused the spread in Hopkinton. I think we were all dealing with a similar spread, whether we were masked or not. Again, I'm not a epidemiologist or a health expert, but I'm just telling you, like, the facts of what I saw in Burlington. That's all I can speak to. So I understand the question about, like, why are these mitigation techniques being employed given the numbers we're seeing. I understand the question. So I don't know that we'll be able to make a correlation between a school somewhere else that took off masks and spread, because I think the context of every school, the timing and so forth is going to matter. But if there's somebody that just stopped wearing masks in the last few weeks, we can certainly ask them if they're willing to share, if the spread seems any more significant.
Thank you, Patrick. Any other questions, Chris?
Just a comment, someone this afternoon sent me a list of all the communities that did have the waiver. And I don't see too many of our neighbors, like I don't see Arlington or Bedford or Billerica or Wilmington or Woburn. So is it the superintendents in this area, are you all kind of on the same page for some reason?
I think that there was a group of superintendents from that area that probably worked together and each tried moving forward with the mask, lifting the mask requirement. We've talked about it as a league as well, but I think our communities are in different places. So as I discussed, is some of the communities themselves have mask mandates in place, so it would be both a community and a school conversation. So I think that would just be in a different place. We are not there, so again, I think that if the mask requirement is lifted, we wouldn't necessarily feel like we would need to coordinate with the town, because we would actually be more aligned with the town. So, Mrs. Monaco, it was one of those things, we try to do things together, but it was one of those areas that every community was approaching this a little bit differently, and so we couldn't reach agreement on what to do together. But we're all aware of what each other is doing, and we're talking about it. So,
thanks.
Anything further? Dr. Conti, anything further on this subject?
No.
Definitively. Okay, moving on to item 9, facilities finance. A is Burlington High School 2021 Core Program Statement of Interest status. Mr. Kuna.
I guess first we'd like to thank the MSBA for accepting our request for a statement of interest this year, but it's unfortunate to tell the committee that we were not approved in the 2021 BHS statement of interest. The window did open last week on Thursday for the 2022 statement of interest. So we do plan on, of course, with your support, submitting a statement of interest for the high school. It's really the only news right now as far as the statement of interest on that, so.
10th time is the charm.
That's what they say. Martha.
I think it's a good idea to put it in again. I don't think we should expect any different answer. And I think we need to continue our work looking at ways that we can renovate the high school and continue our work with the town in terms of the long-term financing and all those other things. I really, when I joined the school committee 7 years ago, maybe we'll get some support from MSBA for the high school renovation. And now it's 7 years later, and it's 10 years after that's been requested, and it isn't going to happen. And so we need to move forward with that. So I think we have been, but I don't want anyone to be under the illusion that we're going to be getting any support from the state for the high school renovation project, but it's still very, very much needed.
Chris.
Bobby, I've heard a lot of questions lately, some from Ways and Means members. If we were to, say, pick the first project to go forward with at the high school, would it be the boilers?
That would be my recommendation, yes.
Okay.
Not just the boilers, but the full HVAC system
And
as a whole.
Do we have a price tag on that?
So we're working on the feasibility study for the full price tag.
Right.
But we're looking at approximately 18 million based on our last assessment in 2017.
Just for the HVAC?
The HVAC and a little bit of the hazardous materials and buildings. But yes, approximately 18 million or so.
Okay. I want to agree with what Martha said. After 9 years being rejected by the state, I don't think we have any time to wait. I think we need to move ahead, especially since we have SBA for the new Fox Hill School.
Again, we can do both at the same time, so
Yeah.
again, we'll submit an application, but we obviously are in the middle of doing the work ourselves, and as soon as that's finalized, we'll come back to the committee. We have worked with the town's finance team. I think there is money in the long-term debt schedule for both projects.
Right.
I just think timing is what's important with long-term debt, and we'll continue to work with the town to make sure we can do this in phases that make sense.
Well, if we have to do it ourselves, we could actually get the high school going before we're really into spending money on the elementary school.
Yes, ma'am.
And, it could be that we have a boiler problem just happen at any point in time, if I understand it correctly. And if that's the case, we're going to have to.
Well, again, you've lived through some of the issues. Remember, we had one of the
middle school, yeah.
The water main breaks up on the roof, right?
yeah,
And we have a new, that was a lot of damage, and so we've been sort of piecing it and patching it together, but at some point, we may have a larger failure.
I don't know exactly what the right forum for it is, but I would be interested in a more detailed conversation with the town finance department about how, because when I was at the Ways and Means Committee last week, I thought I understood what the long-term debt schedule represented, and yet the way it was presented, I wasn't sure I understood. So I don't know if you and I can personally go and talk to the finance committee, or if we want them to come and present here, but I'd like to pursue understanding it better, because we do need the town support for both of these school projects. We know that the Pine Glen is also not in great shape. We also know that there's a police station that needs, you know, a big pot of money. And I want to be able to understand it, so when I talk to people to gather support for this project, which, you know, is going to cost money, I want to know what is the facts? What are the facts about our long-term debt? I know that Burlington has a lot of resources. I know that we are in good shape financially right now. That doesn't mean we can do everything the same year. So I want more information, and I would like you to think about what would be the best way to go forward, and because I'm probably not the only one who wants that information.
You can speak to Mr. Sagarino about what his thoughts are on that.
Yeah, could we like have a meeting with Paul and John and actually go over the numbers? Because like Martha, at the Ways and Means Committee meeting, it was almost like, wait a minute, what? You know, it was one step forward and 5 steps back, if I was understanding it correctly. So I would like to have that kind of a meeting as well.
Okay, we can certainly put something like that together.
Right. Oh, there's Roger.
Is Roger trying to speak up?
Roger, this is Roger, if I may.
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, just briefly. Yeah, I think it'd be great to have a conversation with Paul and with John Denisio. I know that there's the subcommittee of Ways and Means for Town Hall 1 would also be interested in knowing how it lays out. A lot of it depends on the actual numbers and how much ongoing debt, you know, year over year goes into the operating budget. You know, what they're comfortable with in terms of the, you know, long-term principal and interest payments and how much they add to the operating budget. That's the real risk. The timing works out with some of the existing projects to make things, smooth things out. But until you know the numbers and know the sequencing or figure out how you can sequence things, it's hard to figure out the impact on the budget and whether we can tolerate that stuff. But those are the right people to talk to.
I believe what you read, interest rates are going to start creeping back up at some point, and when you're talking millions and millions of dollars, even a little bit of a blip makes a big difference. So there's some benefit in getting things going sooner rather than later, given that possibility. So we can have that discussion. Bob?
Through the chair, if I could just clarify and add some more information to Ms. Monaco's question. That 18.5 million number that I quoted is a reference number that we were carrying for previous conversations. That's broken down to approximately 11.5 million on just the HVAC, but that would be on a proposed new install. We don't have a proposed new install. We have an existing building, which means that there is hazmat, electrical, and plumbing as well too, which escalates that cost a little bit. So there's percentages of those as well, and those estimates that bring us up to approximately 18 back in 2017. So.
Bobby, when do you expect to get the full study completed?
I spoke with the company this morning, and I was hoping to have it this afternoon, and I did not. So I hope to say that since this is a one-meeting month, that I will have it for our next meeting in March. That's my expectation.
And that's going to cover all of the upgrades to the high school?
That will look at the full assessment of what it would cost to replace the existing HVAC systems, look at any code compliance or triggers that would need to be replaced as part of the overall 30/30 rule. It'll also look at any structural integrity of the building, including any concrete roofing issues and so forth, and then what those estimates would cost to replace, yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Item B and 9B, Fox Hill School Building Committee, standing agenda item.
Mr. Chair, we really don't have an update for the committee. I think we will have an update after town meeting, hopefully after successful support of the warrant article, which is the next agenda item. So Bob and I are going to put together a presentation. The Ways and Means Committee presentation, I think, while the result was favorable, I think we just need to simplify the message a little bit. So This committee approved sort of the comprehensive look at all our buildings. Fox Hill was included in that in 2017. They clearly had Fox Hill as our second priority to needing significant work. So in 2017, Bob, you said they said to renovate Fox Hill was, I think you told me roughly $20 million. And that was in 2017. So given inflation, given all that's going on, obviously it's going to be more than $20 million. At some point, we've all had a car where the repairs cost more than replacing the car. And we are at that point with Fox Hill. So I drive a 97 Gold Camry with 240,000 miles. I love my 97 Gold Camry. At some point, I'm going to need to buy a newer old car. So that's where we are. So I think renovating Fox Hill just does not make sense. The dollar amount, the $1.5 million, is lots of money. I'm not going to say that it's not, but the exact dollar amount is really not that important. So we don't need to be precise about the number, because you can be very precise but not accurate. We have to approve the $1.5 million just to demonstrate to the state that we are serious about the project. That's it. If it costs less than 1.5, we'll pay less than 1.5. If it costs more than 1.5, we'll pay more than 1.5. And if the project goes to completion, I'm going to tell you it's going to cost a lot more than $1.5 million, so it'll be absorbed into that. What will the final price tag be? Again, don't really know, because we'll get the estimates 3 or 4 years from now. But we're thinking probably between, $45 and $50 million. So with roughly a 40% potential reimbursement, we're talking about $15 to $20 million from the state. So town meeting needs to approve the $1.5 million in order for us to have access to the $15 to $20 million of reimbursement from the state. And this is their process. And so, again, is 1.4 the right number, Mr. Foss? Maybe. Was 1.7? Maybe. But we have to approve no matter what that number is in order to have access to the $15 to $20 million reimbursement. And the 1.5 number came from them. So that's really going to be the gist of our presentation to town meeting. Is this will allow us to move forward to feasibility. I think what's important to the community to stress, because that was important to this committee, is that after Mr. Murphy's conversation with the MSBA, they did agree to, in the feasibility phase, look at 2 options: a consolidated option, which would put a 5 homeroom K-5 elementary school on the Fox Hill site, and take Pine Glen out of our elementary school fleet. And they also said they would look at a 3 homeroom K-5 school on the Fox Hill site, which maintains Pine Glen in our elementary school fleet. So this committee, the building committee, will have 2 options to look at moving forward. Obviously, a larger school is going to cost more money. A smaller school will cost less money. A larger school, there'll be more reimbursement available. But no matter what this committee decides, in a future year with the building committee, town meeting has to approve the $1.5 million. And if they don't, as I said, just like my Camry, we have to replace Fox Hill anyway. So that's kind of the story behind the warrant article. We're going to work on the messaging, but it is, again, this approval, given the number from the state, allows us to move forward and to get potential reimbursement that really, I'm thinking, is going to allow us to replace Fox Hill with a new building for a relatively small amount compared to what that building would cost us if we were to pay for that fully ourselves.
Martha?
I want to thank you for reviewing and summarizing why we need this Article 11 at the town meeting, but not all town meeting members are watching this meeting. And I know I've asked you before, but I would really like to see that simplified message in writing, and it go to all the town meeting members And I know that Mr. Kuna has spent quite a bit of time editing the video we have that shows the deficiencies at the Fox Hill, which I think would be important to share also with the town meeting members. And the video itself, I watched it and I wasn't always sure what I should be looking at. So if we do share that video, I'd like to have it either be narrated or have a side, sheet. If we can't put the audio in, that's fine, but have a sheet that says, as you watch this video, please look for the rusty ceiling tiles, the 2 teachers in a classroom, the testing going on in the hallways, those kinds of reasons, so that we're sharing with our town meeting members who are, we've been talking about this and we've been looking at it and we've been thinking about it for years, but the town meeting members haven't all been doing that, and I'd like them to have a chance to see why it is we need a new Fox Hill, and also the clear message about what you just said to us here. That'd be really important.
Again, and Mr. Chair, just because sure we all have different thresholds of when things need to be replaced. Again, the Camry as an example for me. I think we should also mention that in 2017, outside architects also recommended that we replace Fox Hill. And then I would say the Massachusetts School Building Authority, which has expertise in school buildings in Massachusetts and has built hundreds, if not thousands, of elementary schools, have also told this community that the Fox Hill School needs to be replaced because they accepted it into their grant program. So I think there are lots of people telling us it's time to replace the school. Ms. Simon, I think we'll try to work on a simplified message. All I was trying to convey to this committee is the precision of the exact dollar amount is really not what this article is about. It's just to show the state that we are committed to the larger project and that the precise numbers will come when the design is finalized and when some future decisions are made. But the state will not move us forward, and we will not be eligible for reimbursement if we don't first commit to this initial step. And I know that's a really hard thing for, because it's a lot of money, and that's a hard thing for people to sort of grasp and to accept. But this is a partnership, and we are trying really hard to make sure that we have access to that reimbursement.
I also would like to request, once again, my concern about us waiting and waiting and waiting, that we schedule another school building committee meeting for the Fox Hill School Building Committee. It would have to be after town meeting. And if there's another deadline, like when is it that the SBA is going to actually vote on it? And once we know when they're actually going to vote on accepting us into the next phase, I'd like to be sure that we have a meeting scheduled as soon as possible after that. Okay, thank you. Do we have a date for that yet? The next SBA meeting, the next MSBA meeting where they're going to vote on accepting us into the next.
Yeah, so.
April 27th?
Well, we have our extension until March 28th.
Okay.
And then when they're going to vote on it is in April 27th, yes. But we have not given back the approval of their projected numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, we don't have a authorized vote from town meeting yet, which we are requesting their support.
Mm-hmm.
So once we submit those to MSBA, they need to review that before they can move us to their board vote.
So if we get those two things to them soon enough, it would be on April 27th that they would take that vote. But we're not positive until we
Yeah,
submit
we won't
it.
get a board vote if we don't get approval from town
Okay,
meeting. So
right. If we don't get this approval from town meeting,
Correct.
we won't get a supported vote in the MSBA, the Massachusetts State Building Authority. Okay.
Correct.
Thank you.
Yes.
All right. Item 10 is old business, Fox Hill Building warrant article. Is there anything that we need to discuss on that? I know it's already been passed by this board and approved, I think, by the Ways and Means Committee, correct?
Yes, sir. So we just discussed it, I think, more than we needed to. So
Okay.
We'll work on a one-pager, Ms. Simon, and we'll get that to the committee.
All right, then, circling back to item 6E, mid-cycle progress review.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to keep this as brief as possible. You all have at your desk the Planning for Success document, which is our 3-year district improvement plan, which we are reaching the conclusion of. We're actually going to be working on a new 3-year plan, which we are going to be preparing this spring and presenting to the committee next fall. The buckets that we're working in, because any district that focuses on 10 things focuses on nothing. So you all heard me say that before. So we basically have learning, equity, and then what I'm calling thriving, and then we have facilities and finance. So those are the 4 main areas. The thriving word sort of has people questioning, and I just want to make sure that we go back to whenever possible and articulate where that word comes from, and that's from the committee's equity statement that we've added to the district improvement plan that you all reaffirmed on September 14th. So the equity statement, again, is educational equity means that every child belongs and receives whatever support he, she, they need to develop his, her, their full academic, emotional, and social potential to learn and thrive every day. That's where the thriving comes from. This begins with kindness and valuing the humanity of every child or individual. So again, I just want to stress that again. We have had to make, and I will acknowledge, we've had to make some compromises to, I would call, best practices in regards to instruction, given the mitigation that we need to put in place for this year. I think this year, honestly, has been more challenging than last year, as it has been a little bit more unpredictable, and I think we've had to make more changes on the fly. I think the protocols have been changing more rapidly, and so as we've adjusted, again, I think our staff has done an incredible job. And you'll hear me say this all the time, any progress that a superintendent makes is the result of the work of others. So any comments I'm making tonight is reflective of the folks up here, building level leaders, teachers, staff, everyone who works in the district, and they've done an incredible job. So I hope in looking through this plan, and what I have to be more disciplined about is referring to this plan more often and making sure that we use this language more frequently, because sometimes people say, well, I don't know what direction the district is going in, and I want to make sure that I'm clear on the direction the district is going in. But I hope you saw in some of the initiatives and outcomes that we're beginning to make progress. I do think starting in March, you're going to see more of a return to what I would call best practice instruction. What is best practice instruction? Might be small group instruction. At the elementary level, it might be students on the carpet starting with morning meeting. Some of those things we've had to forego just because of the spacing requirements that have been asked of us to provide. I think you're going to see moving forward in a warrant an effort to continue our expansion of computer science instruction into the elementary level. So you'll be seeing that through the budget process. We've done an expansion into middle school and high school, but we want to see our kids having computational thinking as a foundational skill, and that literacy as a foundational skill in 2022 and beyond. I think our commitment to mental health and learning has been something that we've focused on with our new director of mental health, Chrissy Concession, has done, I think, a great job, and I'd really like to dedicate a future school committee meeting to bring Chrissy in and some of our principals and folks to talk about what it is that they're doing and how they're addressing some of the anxiety that they're seeing, but also I think just some of the foundational skills that we're incorporating in behavior is how kids communicate. So it's something that we need to address. It's also something that needs to be taught. So we're looking at that moving forward. And so I also think we need to get back to our literacy framework. You all have been working with me for a while. You know that's something that's very important to me. And we had to make some compromises that I think have impacted the growth that we've seen across all students moving forward. And I think I'd like to spend some time later in the spring reintroducing the committee to our literacy framework, making sure that everyone is aware of the new dyslexia guidelines the state has introduced, which I think our framework supports, and to make sure that we're making progress, again, in that area. So I think that's maybe a preview of something to come, but we need to reintroduce some of these structures that we've had in place, what I'm going to call sort of best practice moving forward. And then under learning also, we really started, and I think Patrick did a phenomenal job, and we're going to expand this as part of our conversations, having conversations focusing on portrait of a graduate. What values do we want to see our students leaving high school with? And we started those conversations at all different levels, and what was really surprising is the commonality, I think, Patrick, from those conversations, but re-articulating, restarting those programs after COVID to talk about what's important, what we value in terms of what we want to see that our kids have. So I think there's been some some progress there. I'm frustrated by some of the progress, though, because of the mitigation that we've had, so not as much progress as I'd like. Under equity, I think we have an equity audit that's underway. I think that Mr. Porch, again, has started by establishing great relationships across the district. I think there's been an effort to expand the conversations into the community. I think I want to highlight something for the committee, restorative justice practices. I think that's is going to align well with our mental health efforts and really align well with some of our existing practices in terms of responsive classroom and having those conversations. And I think Mr. Porch is an expert in restorative justice and is having some of those conversations with the administration, and then talking about moving forward with some of that across all levels. May require some changes to some student handbooks and some of our practices, but we'll be doing that gradually, and again, including the committee in those conversations. And again, under equity, looking at our policies, looking at our learners, and again, I want to just stress that word thrive, to make sure that all students feel like they belong and that they can thrive in our community. And then we obviously need to continue our training. And then I always like to highlight, because I know it's not by accident, and I know this committee supports a no-fee policy, because I think that one of the barriers that many districts have in terms of student participation and inclusion is they have fees to participate in activities, fees for transportation, and I just don't want you to ever forget or know that or believe that we take that for granted. We don't, and we think that's an important value. Applying that across all of our programs is important. And you will be seeing later on this year, I think we are looking for some ways to have some smaller vehicles that give us some more flexibility. We've really run into some transportation hurdles this year, and I hate that transportation is a limitation for anything that we're doing. We spend so much money on transportation. It's so incredibly frustrating. And I know sometimes the labor force and the not finding drivers and all that other stuff is beyond anyone's control. I don't think they're trying to make things difficult, but it just really is frustrating to have that be the limiting factor, because it's hard enough to create these programs and to give a lot of these students the opportunity. Under thriving, I do want to highlight the continued collaboration with the Burlington Fire and Police on all student and safety protocols. I think that came into play yesterday very vividly. The police were very responsive. We had our standard response protocol in place. I think the communication was very effective and very direct, and I think our relationship has been very good under Chief Brown and Deputy Chief Kirchner. So again, I want to thank them. And again, our school resource officers, we consider just part of our staff, and they've been doing, I think, a great job and have been very supportive of us. And then I think our outreach to families and our outreach to the community through Thriving, the Let's Talk About It we talked about tonight. I think you're aware that we have a new LPAC, parents that we're bringing in to talk about features of the district that are important to them. I think that's new for this year. Carrie Lamprey, our Director of English Learners, has done, again, a great job coordinating our program and making sure parents are being connected with. We have to change some of our practices, and that gets harder as we get more entrenched, I guess, and I'll say as I get more entrenched, making sure that we're not just communicating in one way, that parents have access to translations. I shared with you a policy very early on that we're going to be speaking more to when we go through our comprehensive program review. There's going to be some cost associated with making sure that our district documents are translated and people have access to the information that we need them to have access to. And I think Patrick's going to be spending more time on that particular policy in the coming months. So you've seen an early vision of that. And I think looking for to expand our continued partnerships with Burlington businesses in the private sector. We are so fortunate to be located where we are. The Burlington Area Chamber of Commerce is very supportive, a great partner, and having our students have those opportunities with internships and everything else that they have, just being in Burlington and taking advantage of that. The Evening Academy, the Simon Academy at Burlington, working through the Simon Youth Foundation, and the Simon Mall at Burlington, again, a great supporter of Burlington students. Jill Graham and her staff, again, just do an incredible job. And so I think that's an opportunity to have kids who may not be successful during the day to have them thrive. And again, want to thank the committee for their support of that. Facilities and finance, it wasn't very many years ago when getting a clean audit would have been something that drew a lot of attention. I think Nicole has done a great job in the business office. You're getting, again, monthly reports. This year has been challenging. Last year has been challenging with some of the unknown costs associated with COVID and also some of the unspent dollars. So I think you heard at the Ways and Means meeting that there's a free cash number that's a little bit atypical because we turned back money that we didn't spend, but I think the town was then also very generous during COVID in terms of providing all teachers with the MacBooks when we needed to do the online teaching. So I think there's been a great, again, back and forth, but I think Nicole's been at the center of that, keeping us all straight and making sure our transactions are transparent is what I would say. And I think the school committee's comfort level, just looking at all of you and having worked with you for a while is much better than it was in prior years. So I'm going to say I think we've made progress there. Thank you, Ray. We also are looking to expand dual enrollment opportunities, and we might need to spend some time talking a little bit about dual enrollment. Mr. Porch, Patrick, and I went to Assumption College a couple weeks ago, and we're just continuing looking for partnerships with higher ed institutions who are willing to extend their programs to our students who are ready, and just provide an opportunity for students to earn high school credits and college credits concurrently. And it's just such a much better deal than some advanced placement courses that do not count for any sort of degree advancement. There also may be opportunities to get some of our students, especially our first generation college students, on a college campus just to get them to have that experience. So we're excited and looking forward to that. I can't finish a mid-year without talking about facilities and operations. Bob has done about 18 million different things to get the buildings cleaned, opened, to have the CO2 testing ongoing, to manage the SBA process, to have the sidewalks cleared during our snowstorms. So having the 10-year capital plan up to date and running. So again, any mid-cycle review, any superintendent review is a reflection of the work of others, and I'm just so fortunate to have great people who work in the district and work for me and get all this done. So again, I'm a little frustrated that people are going to talk about learning loss and deficit, because I think our kids have learned a tremendous amount. I think they are where they are. We're a public school. We will catch them up, if that's the phrase people want to say. I think we'll meet them where they are, and they will make growth and they'll make progress. I think we have talented teachers in our classrooms, talented building leaders, and again, the folks up here are going to continue to do the incredible work they've done, and I think it's only we're really going to start moving back to, I think, a more typical environment, and I think that we'll begin to see a lot of the growth that we would normally see when we're able to implement our best practices that we know how to do, and we're on our way. So I want to make sure I just thank the committee for your continued support. The last 2 years have been interesting, challenging, and I'm not saying the pandemic is over. I'm not a health expert, but I am believing that we're going to start moving back to a more typical learning environment very, very shortly, and the state is going to step away from some of the oversight that they've really pushed down on us for the last couple of years. Is what I'm hearing from the conversations that I'm in. So with that, Mr. Chair, hopefully we'll have more progress the second half of the year that we can talk about in June.
Thank you. Are there any questions or comments on the mid-year report? Martha?
I want to thank you for your progress on this 3-year plan that, despite the pandemic, that we have made progress. There's clearly things that aren't finished, and that's not the intention of this kind of a plan. And so I just want to thank you and the entire staff and faculty for everything that they've done in the last 3 years that show, because when we look at these goals and objectives that we set 3 years ago, we can see that we've made progress despite the pandemic. There was one thing that I have been wondering about, and we've talked occasionally about the portrait of a graduate, and I don't need to hear any details, but it sounds like it's been ongoing among staff and in the district. Is that accurate? And because it's something we haven't heard a lot of reports on, which is fine because we have been talking about other things. But if you could just very briefly, tell us, because I'd like to sort of know where we are with that process. It is obviously a big, long process.
So the portrait of a graduate, or some people call it vision of a graduate, like there's different terminology, is pretty common in high schools nowadays, especially it's part of the accreditation process. But our thought pre-pandemic was, and still our thought, but just we haven't completed the whole exercise, K-12, was that we would, it's hard to have a standalone 9 through 12 high school like we all talk about, especially at graduation time, that there's a K-12 experience and that all of our educators should share in the, kind of the positive emotions when our kids graduate, because they all played a role in that. So with that in mind, it's hard to just have these portraits of what a graduate looks like without getting the voices of the educators K-12 and getting their insights and values and so forth. Also, obviously, parents should be involved, community members, because that's, again, if we're going to have a true portrait or vision of a graduate for Burlington students, then we need to get all stakeholders involved. So where it stands right now is I know the high school has been doing a lot of work on it during the course of the year. In some of their professional time, the high school tends to have a little bit more just because of the way the schedule runs. So I know that's something that they've been working on, and it's something on our priority list to get back to with K through 8 educators and making sure that there's a strong parent voice involved as well.
Thank you.
All right, anything further on that item? Seeing none. Is there anything else that anybody wants to bring forward under old business? Or any other unfinished business that we have to address? We do have need for executive session this evening. Mass General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 21A, Subsection 2, permits us to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations, and also for approval of the minutes. We will return to public session only for purposes of adjournment, and the chair will entertain a motion to go into executive session.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded. We have to do a roll call vote. Mrs. Bond?
Aye.
Mrs. Monaco?
Aye.
Ms. Simon?
Aye.
Mr. Foss?
Aye.
Chair votes aye, and we are in executive session.